Class where I look at parts of speech. I want to explain how to identify different parts of speech in any sentence. And it's something which is taught now at primary school, but it's something which is much harder than primary school level. It's perhaps easy in simple sentences, but really tricky in any kind of long, complicated sentence, like one which you will find in literature. So this is actually the contents of the book which I sell, Grammar in Theory and in Practice. This is the course book that I use to teach grammar and to teach grammar and rhetorical devices. And so really, I'm trying to teach you how to improve your writing. Good morning, Lolly Lolly. So there are 7 different parts of speech. There's actually an 8th part, which is called exclamations, or what are they called? I've forgotten now. But these are things like wow or ow, or things like the exclamations, I think they're called. It's another part of speech, but we're not going to look at those because they don't really function in the same way as the other 7. These 7 are the important ones: determiners, nouns, verbs, conjunctions, adjectives, adverbs, and prepositions. And I must admit that pronouns are sometimes separated, but pronoun is a type of noun. It's a noun that stands in for another noun, and we'll look at that in a second. So these are the different categories. Now, I'll quickly describe what each part of speech is. And I'm going to start at the bottom with prepositions, which are one of the hardest ones. So perhaps I won't start with that. In fact, let's start with nouns, but I'm going to miss determiners just because I want you to just memorize determiners. I think it's the easiest way. So a noun is a thing. It doesn't have to be a physical thing. It could be an abstract thing, but it's a thing in a sentence. And these things, they're usually the doers of verbs, where we say subject, or they're the one having the verb done to them, in which case we say object. Yeah. So if we say something like Dave hit the table, Dave is the doer of hit, and the table is the thing being hit. So that's the object. Table is object and Dave is subject. And usually English sentences go subject, verb, object. Okay, so nouns are usually subjects and objects. They may also be after prepositions, and we'll look at prepositions in a second because they usually have a noun after them. Okay, verbs are not best described as doing words because all sorts of words look like doing words. Yeah, action looks like a doing word, but it's a noun, it's a thing. You can't use it as a verb. So verbs always have a doer. Yeah, they always have a doer. They always have a subject. So the verb from action is not action, it's act. Because act, you can give it a doer. You can say Dave acts. You can say we act. You can say they have acted. You can put it in different tenses. They are acting. They will act. They had acted. Yeah, you can put it in a lot of different tenses, and that shows you that act is a verb. Okay, so verbs always have doers, and sometimes they have objects. Conjunctions join things together. Okay, the really important ones are called fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, and they join main clauses together. But there are other conjunctions as well that start incomplete ideas, and we call those subordinating conjunctions, like although, although, because, while, when, and they're conjunctions because they've always got a clause, a subject and a verb after them. Okay, adjectives always describe nouns. So something like big, small, long, short, expensive, cheap, new, old. They always describe a thing, so they're adjectives. And adverbs also describe, but they describe everything else. They describe verbs, they describe adjectives, they describe other adverbs, and they describe whole clauses. Now, let me quickly give you some examples. Adverb, for example, if you say, I slowly read, slowly is describing read, so it's an adverb, it's describing the verb read. But if you say something like incredibly good, incredibly is an adverb. Adverbs often end in ly because it describes the adjective good. So incredibly, adverbs describe adjectives, and you can even say incredibly slowly, And so incredibly describes an adverb slowly, and that makes it an adverb as well. So that's worth remembering. Now, these prepositions at the bottom, they often show position: in, on, under, up, down. But the most important thing about a preposition is that it must be followed by a noun. Yeah, up the stairs, stairs is a noun. Down the pole, pole is a noun. Round the park, park is a noun. So round, down, up, they're all prepositions. Now, all of this is very difficult to understand without actually putting it into practice. So we're going to do an exercise right now. But before we do, I did promise that I'd show you a list of determiners. What are determiners? Well, they identify or quantify the noun, which means they are a type of adjective. And I think that's very important. Yeah, they identify or quantify a noun, which means they are a subset, if you like, of adjectives. Yeah, but what are the most common determiners? Just memorize them is my advice. A, an, and the are the most common determiners. Yeah, they always identify the next noun. Also, possessive pronouns. His, her, I made a mistake there. Your, that should say. Your, his, her, your. There's a mistake there, guys. Sorry about that. Your, my, their, our, John's, Sarah's. These are all possessive. So they're determiners, the possessive pronouns and possessive nouns. Quantifiers, much, many, few, little, some, any, fewer, less, all, each, every. Numbers, 3, 8, yeah, they always come before a noun and they always tell you how many of the nouns, so they are determiners. And identifiers, this pen, that man, these children, those jeans, yeah, they're also determiners. So let's have a go at an exercise now, and we're going to have to stop sharing and then start sharing on one of the Chrome tabs. Let's try this. Okay, hopefully that is working. So this is an exercise which is online. I like how Towson University do exercises, especially for parts of speech. So let's have a look at what kind of word each one of these words, what kind of word they are in the sentence, how they function. Okay, so we're going to look at a small snail climbed over a slippery log and inched slowly toward the nearby fields. And we're going to put these in as our answers. Now, I must admit, they have qualifier here in Towson University. A qualifier is a type of adverb that describes an adjective or an adverb. And so we're just going to call them adverbs. I don't think it's necessary, this extra category of qualifier. So we're just going to call them adverbs if we come across them. Okay, so the first word, a, you should remember that this is one of the determiners. Yeah, a, an, and the are the three most common determiners. A must be a determiner here because it's identifying the snail. Which snail? A snail, not the snail, not this snail, not your snail, not my snail, but a snail. And all those words are determiners. Yeah, a, and, the, your, my, Dave's, his, her. They're all determiners because they identify the noun. So A is a determiner. Then we've got small. Well, which word is small describing? Which word is it describing? Sometimes in grammar books they say modifying. Which word is small? Modifying. Which word is it describing? That's all they mean. Of course, it's describing snail. So if we know what type of word snail is, we can work out what type of word small is. Now, snail is a thing. Yeah, it's a thing which you can pick up, you can throw. I'm not suggesting that you do that, but it's a thing. Yeah, you can touch it, you can drop it. And notice that in this sentence, it's a thing that is doing something. It's climbing. The snail climbed. Yeah, so it's the subject of an action verb, of a verb. It's the subject, it's the doer of a verb, which means it must be a noun. Doers of verbs must be nouns. They must be things. So snail is a noun. And if small describes a noun, must be an adjective because adjectives describe nouns. Yeah, a big snail, a small snail, a large snail, a cheap snail, an expensive snail. Only adjectives go before nouns and describe the noun. So you can often do substitution tests to see what kind of word you've got. If you substitute small for other words, you'll see that only adjectives fit in that gap. Yeah, and that's how we know small is an adjective. That and the fact that it describes the noun snail. So snail is a noun, and then we've got climbed. Now, isn't this something that the snail did? Yeah, this word has a doer. This word has a subject, which means it must be a verb, and it's the verb to climb in the past tense. Now, any word which has got a tense must be a verb. Only verbs go into tenses. Yeah, you can say I climb, I am climbing, I have climbed, I have been climbing, I will climb, I will have been climbing. You can use loads of different tenses with the verb climb, which means it must be a verb. And it's certainly being used as a verb here because the snail did it. The snail climbed. Okay, now we've got the word over. And what I want you to notice about the word over is firstly, it kind of does describe position. Yeah, up, down, on, in, under, over. First thing to notice. And secondly, notice that over is always followed by a noun. Yeah, over the bridge, over the palm tree, yeah, over the forest, over the river, over the lake, over the sea. You've always got a noun coming after over. So over sets up a relationship to a noun, a positional relationship to a noun. And that's why we call it a preposition. Now, I must admit, not all prepositions describe position, sadly, but most of them do. And the real definition of a preposition is it's a word that sets up a relationship to a noun, sometimes positional relationship, but it must be followed by a noun. If it's not followed by a noun, it's no longer a preposition, or it's not functioning as a preposition. And this is important because over can be a preposition, but in other sentences, it might be an adverb. And we'll look at that in more detail in the future, but not today because that's quite complicated. And let's build up to that moment. So we've got over preposition. We've already looked at a, and we've seen that it's on our list of determiners. Yeah, the is only a determiner. It's never used in a different way. It always identifies the next word, the noun. Yeah, the tree, the cat, the dog, the house, the car. And so the is a determiner, and it's the log this time, yeah? The slippery log, but it's the log. The log is the thing that it's identifying. So the is a determiner. Slippery. Now, doesn't this word describe something? What does it describe? It describes log. So we need to know what kind of word log is. And if we look carefully at log, we see that it's a thing. Yeah, it's definitely a thing. It's a thing that sits there. So it's a noun, log. And slippery describes a noun. So slippery is an adjective. Yeah. So we got slippery, adjective, log, noun, and. Now, and is one of our 7 main conjunctions. Yeah. And joins things together. Sometimes and joins nouns together. Bananas and oranges. Yeah, then it's joining nouns. But some and can join anything together. It can join adjectives, yeah? Big and beautiful. Yeah, it could join adverbs, slowly and cautiously. It could join whole clauses. I went to the shops, comma, and I bought some bread. You're joining 2 main clauses there with an and notice I put a comma before the and I say this just because a lot of English teachers say incorrectly that you can never use a comma before an and if you believe that, open up any one of your books on the bookshelf on any page and look for an and with a comma before it, and I guarantee you'll find it. So please be careful. Sometimes we pick up misunderstandings, we pick up misconceptions in the classroom, and never use a comma before an and is a big misunderstanding. We don't use a comma before an and in a list of nouns or adjectives because schools follow Cambridge style. But when you're joining main clauses together, you do need a comma before the and that's important. Okay, so and is a conjunction because it joins things together. And here it's joining 2 verb phrases. Yeah, a small snail climbed, blah, 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 and inched. Now, look at this word inched. Doesn't this word have a doer? Yeah, the snail inched slowly toward the nearby fields. which means it's a verb. Any word with a doer must be a verb. It must be. Yeah, it's what a verb is. It's not a doing word, it's a word with a doer, and there's a difference. And I think it's a better definition that it's a word with a doer. So inched, notice it's in past tense. Yesterday, the snail inched. Tomorrow, the snail will inch. Yeah, and so you can put it in different tenses. So it's definitely a verb, inched. Then we got the word slowly. Notice it ends in ly. That's a big clue because only one part of speech very often ends in ly. But I want you to notice that slowly describes how the snail inched. So slowly must be an adverb because it's describing a verb. Now remember, adverbs describe verbs, adjectives, other adverbs and clauses. So they do a lot of describing adverbs. It's not only adjectives, which are the describing words. Adjectives describe nouns, adverbs describe everything else. So slowly describes inched, it describes a verb, it's an adverb. Okay, now we look at this toward. And firstly, I want you to notice that again, it's kind of talking about position, isn't it? Toward, as opposed to away, yeah, or something like that. And notice that toward, like over, is always followed by a noun. Toward the station, toward the school, toward the shops, toward the beach. Always a noun after it, which is telling us that, like over, it's functioning as a preposition. It sets up a relationship to a noun. It must have a noun after it. So one of the following words is going to be a noun, definitely. But first we've got the. And the, we've already said it's a determiner because it identifies the noun, the house, the tree, the hole, the net, the bush, whatever. So you got the determiner and then nearby. Now, what is nearby here? I want you to notice that nearby really is describing something. What's it describing? It's describing the fields. Fields is plural. Notice now anything that's plural must be a thing. You can only count things. Yeah, you can only have many of things. So fields must be a noun because there are many of them. Yeah, only nouns there can be many of something. And nearby describes a noun, so nearby must be an adjective, yeah, in this sentence. But that doesn't mean that nearby is always an adjective, yeah? If I give you a different sentence like, I live nearby, notice that when you say I live nearby, nearby is describing where you live. So nearby is describing a verb, live, and so nearby is an adverb in that sentence. But nearby fields, nearby shops, nearby trees, anything, if it's describing a noun, it's an adjective. Okay, so I hope that's been useful and I hope that will help you with Towson University exercises. I hope it will help you choose the right answers. Please do just memorize the determiners. I really do recommend it. Let me just quickly put it back up here. I do recommend just learning this list for the determiners because it makes it easier. And I'm sorry, I didn't notice that you instead of your, that should definitely be your. So I'm hold my hands up to that mistake. I hope I've changed that in one of the later versions, but it looks like there's a tiny typo there. So I am sorry about that. I don't like there to be mistakes in the book, certainly not. So that's a good list of determiners. Please learn those if you want to make those exercises easier. Okay, so now I want you to have a go at those exercises and each time think, what's the word doing? How's it functioning? Does it have a doer, in which case it's a verb? Does it describe a noun, in which case it's an adjective? Does it set up a relationship to a noun, in which case it's a preposition? Does it join things together, in which case it's a conjunction? And they're good to just learn as well. But we will look at them, we will focus on them in greater detail in future classes. Okay, thank you everybody for watching. I do appreciate all the support and I hope to see you all soon.